Nevertheless, with the main one of powerful rank. Well, today is a day of continuous victories for Zelensky and for this whole gang. Let's start perhaps with the main victory they achieved. Zelensky removed Russian from the list of languages that are subject to protection as minority languages. All Ukrainian media were talking about this, saying what a victory it was. We finally got rid of it. Now we'll really start talking. And by the way, few people mention that in Zakarpattia now, thanks to the demands of the Hungarians. Signs are required to be duplicated in Hungarian, documents must be duplicated in Hungarian, and Hungarian is taught in schools. Well, it's just some kind of alternative Hungary. There's nothing wrong. Everything is fine there. I mean, no one is influenced by other countries. Hungarian is just wonderful. I have no confrontations or negativity towards Hungary at all. But to do something like this, to duplicate documents for a region of your own country, in a language that has nothing to do with Slavic languages at all, that's extremely strange. But they removed Russian from the list of protected languages. What exactly happened? Zelensky signed a law excluding the Russian language from the list of those that are protected under the provisions of the European Charter for Regional or Minority Languages. This was reported by Verkhovna Rada speaker Ruslan Stefanchuk, who, like the others, is a former KVN participant. What can I say here? I can only add that, well, it's powerful. Let's watch this angry monologue now. How strong we are, our powerful planes are flying, we're going to bomb everyone. Yes, we bombed and we keep going. He called it an important decision for protecting the Ukrainian language sphere and for Kiev to fulfill its European obligations. The language of the aggressor state cannot use the protection mechanisms created to support the languages of indigenous peoples and national communities. And the countries that have joined the European Charter for the Protection of Languages must determine the list of languages themselves when ratifying the documents. Initially, Russian was included in Ukraine, but then it was removed, and now Zelensky has finally signed everything. The economy is growing, people are happy, and the war ended instantly. Victory all the way to the Indian Ocean, where Ukrainian soldiers aren't even getting their boots wet. Well, in short, it's just the perfect combination of positive factors that leads to a powerful boost, a breakthrough that will probably take us straight to flying to Alpha Centauri. But that's just in dreams, because in reality, of course, everything is different. At the same time, after another, let's say, red line has been crossed, or maybe it's brown now, honestly, I don't even know what colors they're drawing them with these days. It suddenly turned out that Ukraine is close to negotiations with Russia. And the protection of the Russian language is one of the main things. I remember, it's one of the main demands from the Russian Federation. And then suddenly Zelensky says, let's remove peace and the Russian language. But some official from the representatives, this is a representative of the German government. Again, what does he have to do with all this? I don't know. But nevertheless, his words were quoted here, and the words... This is the result of the resumption of peace talks. The fact is that Ukraine is in a new position of strength, say officials from Germany. Here, Sibiga with his peace to Rusranks immediately comes to mind, and the official, apparently, is describing what he feels when watching Sibiga's powerful speeches. Russia has found itself in a dead end, according to this German official, and cannot win by military means, said once again a representative of the German government. Apparently, all of Germany's problems have been solved. Merz is the most popular chancellor of all time. The migrant issue has been resolved, and the economy is doing fine. Cars are being produced at new factories, apparently, once again, and everything is on the rise, just like in Ukraine. The main problem in Germany right now is the negotiations between Ukraine and Russia, and Pizrupis Rusranks. Wonderful. We are being told the following. A window for diplomacy may gradually open here, AFP quotes a senior German government official as saying, but he gives his assessment with due caution because this assessment depends on a number of factors. Here it's not just Captain Obvious anymore, but Admiral Obvious. This analysis is so deep, God level, that you can't help but be amazed. It's like saying the sun is shining on you, you're hot. Or, I don't know, water is wet? And how wet you get in water, when you're immersed in it, also completely depends on a number of factors. That's why we give this assessment, or rather we say that water is wet, with some caution. Because how else could it be? How can you live if you don't add some external factors? According to the same official, the dynamics of the war have changed in the past week, and today Kiev is in a new position of strength. And Russia cannot win militarily, says this German official, and its economy is in decline. But here, indeed, the economy is really not in the best condition. But again, the state of the Ukrainian economy immediately comes to mind. Although receiving 90 billion, then another 60 billion probably helps improve people's well-being. But at least villas are being built and quite steadily. Next, Merz Pachtaginosa says that peace can only be achieved with the help of Europe and the USA. But obviously, not through negotiations with Russia. That is Ukraine and Russia, but Europe must definitely be squeezed in there, not forgetting about Albania. Well, sorry, I have no negative connotations here. It's just an interesting fact that there are a lot of countries in the European Union, and naturally each of them has its own wishes and demands. And to fulfill everyone's wishes, I don't know how they're going to manage that in these negotiations, which are already complicated. And then the US is squeezed in as well. And Merz stated that only Europe and the United States can help with this problem. And the window for possible negotiations between Europeans and Ukrainians with Russia is slowly opening. Which way is it opening? Why is it opening? Are they even going through the right window? Maybe this window was never closed at all. Well, so many interesting thoughts come to mind about this that I won't even mention them all. There's a whole swarm of thoughts about the open window for negotiations with Russia. Again, it's the Europeans who are trying to get through this window. The US isn't getting involved anymore. They have their own problems with Iran. Well, at least now Merz, once again the most popular German leader of all time, has an opportunity to speak out about the conflict. Well, the real breakthrough for us is that finally 27 EU countries have given the green light to Zelensky. When the negotiations on Ukraine's accession begin, you won't believe it, but 27 EU member states have agreed to open the first negotiation cluster on accession with Ukraine and Moldova. Let me remind you, there are 8 of them, not just 1 or 2. That means at every stage, each one can be blocked. And they can say, you haven't met the requirement about, for example, the predominance of beef in pork cutlets. Are your pork cutlets made from pork? No, that won't work. You need to open a new cluster. Or, for example, your fields are planted with the wrong crops. We immediately pour concrete over the fields because the Ukrainian economy shouldn't be agricultural but a steel porcupine economy. They call Ukraine a steel porcupine whose quills are pointed apparently toward Russia and its belly toward Europe. And this back protects Europe from attack, although now they say that Russia didn't want to attack, but just in case we'll point the steel quills where they need to go. The first cluster is called the Basics, the basic block. It's the foundation of the negotiation process. It covers the key values and principles on which the EU is built, from the rule of law to strong democratic institutions. Well, I think at this point, Ukraine should be teaching lessons in democracy to these very European powers because, for example, the IMF gave the green light to finance Ukraine and said that democracy is flourishing there. It's just Democrats everywhere, democracy all around. So, again, you simply won't find a more enlightened democracy anywhere in the whole world, and maybe even in our entire universe. And why should Ukraine adopt the democratic principles of Europe if Europe, in my opinion, could very well adopt the democratic principles of Ukraine? Well, like those same military enlistment officers, the excellent police who do everything to serve the people. Politicians are honest and selfless. Yes, they are selfless, and well, they do everything for the good of the state. We can learn from Europe. We don't need to teach Ukraine anything. Von der Leyen states the following: "This is a recognition of the determination, courage, and hard work that both countries have demonstrated. The countries, including Moldova, are also part of a powerful military and economic alliance, and they have demonstrated a number of achievements in advancing reforms, even in the face of enormous challenges. And it's a signal that the EU's offer of peace, stability, and opportunities has no equal." I'm curious about Moldova. What huge challenges did it face? Honestly, I still don't understand. Well, it seems like the country has existed more or less steadily for several decades now. There, unlike in Ukraine, there weren't any major upheavals. Yes, of course there were some, but the threat of all those revolutions wasn't as strong there. But now a democratic president has come as well. Democracy can also teach Europe through Moldova. But our Sandala is the most democratic one, just like Zelensky. They're two of a kind, both democratic. The word democracy is written on the sole of each boot. And with these soles, they trample the enemies inside the country, not outside. Well, that's just how it turns out. What can you do? That's just how it turned out. It happened that way. And then we have this open window, Ursula von der Leyen called it a strategic choice that strengthens peace, security, and well-being across the entire continent, in a world marked by growing uncertainty. A large European Union serves our common interests, added the head of the European Commission. But it's long been known that if a powerful group, let's say a pack, gets some weaker individuals joining them, that pack immediately becomes 3 times stronger. You know that, right? And here, well, when inflation is just around the corner in the EU, when taxes are rising, yes, of course we need to accept countries that will require such financial injections as EU member states have truly never seen before. And right away, the more money you spend, it's long been known. There was a crisis in France once, and there the Sun King, I think, spent a huge amount of money on all sorts of his entertainments, castles, and everything. And he kept changing finance ministers because everyone was saying that it was necessary to slash spending on all sorts of dresses for his favorites, on these palaces, endless gifts, and so on. What did the king do? He hired a finance minister who said, no, you need to spend even more. Then neighboring states will see that you spend a lot, and they'll understand that you have a lot of money, they'll trust you more, and they'll want to be friends with you, make military alliances and all that. Maybe that's how it should be done in the European Union too. So, 2 countries were accepted. Obviously, if they were accepted, it means they are powerful economically, militarily, politically, democratically, and in any other way you can think of. As I recall, the finance minister was later dismissed and possibly executed, though I may be wrong. But nevertheless, you see, this heroism lives on in history, it lives on in our memory. And they take it on faith, and even put this point of view into practice wholesale and retail. So, both there and the European Union, well done. Another victory, that's not all. Another victory is that up to 50 assault troops in the armed forces of Ukraine will now be foreigners. Zelensky announced the transformation of the army. Honestly, I find it hard to comment here. Who, where, what kind of assault troops? Indians maybe? Bangladeshis? I don't understand who would go there. If you know more about military affairs than I do, and you understand how much you have to pay a single mercenary, even just a soldier, not to mention officers, for him to join the assault troops, that deadly zone over there, where drones rule, hover, dominate, and do whatever they want. Well, then tell me, how much does a mercenary charge for that, and how much would it take if, for example, there are, let's say, 100,000 assault troops? I'll skip Ukraine as an example and use 100,000 as a round number, I don't know the real figure. 50,000 will be foreigners. Assign, for example, $4,000 to each foreigner. Well, it's unlikely anyone would go for 1,000. So how much would you have to pay them every month? I think even the US wouldn't have enough money for that, but the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine doesn't pay attention to this. He announced the opening of a market for recruiting foreigners into combat units, and about the gradual discharge from service of the soldiers who have been in the defense forces the longest. He says the following: we are opening a market for recruiting foreigners, recruitment to strengthen combat units and to save the lives of Ukrainian soldiers. Our goal is to fill up to 50% of the shortage of assault trooper and infantry positions with foreigners by the 30th. And separately, he stated that those who have served the longest and spent the most time in combat will be demobilized. And he repeated that human life is the greatest value, and our main task is to do everything possible to preserve the life of a soldier on the front line. That's how it is. Victory, military victory, economic victory, philological or historical, call it whatever you want. Well, it's just a day. I think it should be called some kind of victory day and celebrated every month. Just like that. Some Friday the 13th, for example, that will be Victory Day. We celebrate it every month. It doesn't actually happen every month, but you could pick a Wednesday, for example, or a Friday if the 13th falls on it. So there are a lot of options here. And another victory, that's not all either. Don't think that's where it ends. The IMF believes that the current utility rates in Ukraine need to be reviewed. Well, obviously the IMF wants to achieve an improvement in the quality and standard of living for Ukrainians. So probably they want to lower the rates, right? For water, for electricity, for everything else. Is that true or not? Well, no, of course not. Naturally, they want to raise them even more to get more as well. So the IMF and the Ukrainian authorities have reached a staff-level agreement regarding the first review of the 4-year program. In short, there are a lot of words here. The truth is that the Kyiv authorities will only get the money if they increase the tariffs. It turns out that the current tariff system is weakening the state energy companies. So the same minister from the former Naftogaz, I think also from a state energy company, is building himself a house together with Zelensky right here. Well, of course, he is also a clear sign, a vivid example that he is weak and skinny. He headed a rundown ministry there, the Ministry of Unity, and now it's unclear where it has gone. But nevertheless, everything is just fine. And in order to strengthen the positions of all these powerful leaders, what needs to be done? The situation in the energy sector needs to be assessed. Now, the focus is shifting to the reforms necessary to prepare for the liberalization of the energy market. The liberalization of the energy market means letting the attack dogs off the leash of this very market, namely the prices. That means each energy company will be able to set whatever price they want and whatever is profitable for them. And not all sorts of conditions, some limits, like you can't exceed a certain price if it goes above the average level in different countries. No, prices will skyrocket and there will even be hyperinflation. Let's call it, let's say, liberalization. Well, I don't know, of the financial sector. You could call it that too. Can you? Yes, you can. Is it liberal? Yes, it's liberal. According to the fund, the current system of utility tariffs for the population and the special obligations tied to it in the energy market have worsened the financial condition of state-owned energy companies. Poor things, huh? And now in Ukraine, they are preparing a roadmap for changing tariffs. To solve this important problem, the Ukrainian authorities are preparing a special roadmap. The document should, of course, include social protection mechanisms for vulnerable groups of the population. I think the most vulnerable category of the population is deputies and draft office workers, because TCC workers are not liked and their feelings are hurt. And deputies receive very little. There are only 450 of them and they get only about 52,000 hryvnias each, I think. I think every deputy should get free energy supplied to their palaces. Well, more precisely to their little houses, let's say, with straw roofs. And give each of them an extra torch, for free, and also the latest Mercedes. Why not? That would also be liberalization of the car market. There are so many ways to come up with liberalization here that there will never actually be a liberal country. For example, what other requirements are there? People ask us what the IMF program contains. We don't know, so let's take a look. The removal of the exemption from paying VAT and customs duties on international postal shipments. They're removing this, so you'll have to pay. Combating transfer pricing abuses. Honestly, I don't know what that is. I'm not that far from economics, but I have no idea what this means. If anyone knows, write it down. And the reform of the simplified taxation system. Well, since it's simple, if we reform it, we'll make it more complicated. But I can't think of anything else. I mean, how can you reform a simplified taxation system? Obviously make it so complicated that even the devil himself couldn't figure out why he's now paying 3 times more taxes than, say, a couple of years ago. Well, obviously because the IMF demands it. And then, like in Orwell's 1984, they'll say that the bread ration is actually 300 grams now, not 400. All that talk about 400 grams was the work of enemies. They were the ones spreading it. The bread ration was lower, and now the valiant government has managed to increase the ration to 300 grams. From 400, well, a negative increase again, but these are the government's efforts. You don't understand me. And after that, Ukraine will receive a new tranche. I think it's just wonderful. And the last victory is a broader European one. It turns out that the US cannot help Ukraine and Europe with gas in the winter. Well, that's called freeze, wolf's tail. Why? Because they themselves don't have the necessary amount of liquefied natural gas that's needed. Europe's goal by the end of injection season, as a US official here noted, stuck with me. Well, go fill up your UGS, those very same liquefied gas storage facilities, to about 90%. I saw analysts' forecasts saying that reaching the level of 70 will be considered a success. That's for this coming winter, which is expected to be cold. That's why Riddle says that right now Europe's UGS are filled to 42%, which is the lowest level since 2018. And since this requires assistance, the US drops out and can't help. Honestly, I don't even know how to react to all this news anymore. It's like we've ended up in some kind of twisted inside-out world. Twisted not in the way you might think, don't go there, but exactly inside out, where black is called white, white is called black, love is called hate, and vice versa. Basically, all the concepts are being swapped. And by the way, that's something people often do in times of change. And they tell us that a twofold increase in tariffs is a good thing because life will get better, life will get more fun. Well, that's the kind of thing we're dealing with too. The partners are like, well, we're partners, we'll come to your aid, but sorry, we don't have any gas and there won't be any for you either. But we express deep concern that people will die in the winter. There is no concern deeper than that. Only the hole in the budget of some countries might be deeper. That's something you still have to achieve. So what? Let's try to look at some more powerful leaders, because what do they think about this situation? I think all sorts of things. It's been a while since Zelensky appeared. Let me fix that oversight.
Well then.
Let's listen to the clowns, comrades. And here they come now, the greatest experts of all time. First, of course, Tuka, respect to the old man. Let's let him go first. Powerful, as he called himself, a strong old man. Or is it that Taras the lawyer, Taras Prest, if you're watching, called him that, and he saw it and started using that call sign?
Knowledge is, every month, unfortunately, we suffer losses among our personnel.
We suffer losses among our personnel. Tuka especially suffers losses. I'm sure that Tuka's count increases every month, but that's a negative loss. Here, it's not what you might think. We are losing...
Of course, 50,000 a month. So, through mobilization, it's necessary to replenish the ranks with at least 50,000 servicemen every month in order to avoid a shortage.
Replenish? That means you have to go out on the streets and grab people off the street because, well, you need 50,000 people.
Human resources in the armed forces of Ukraine. A total failure of mobilization. If draft dodgers are like this...
The nervous tick is likely also linked to the best life ever. But to be so nervous, sitting at home and telling on every possible platform that more people need to be killed, I mean mobilized, well, that's really something, yeah.
National heroes, then please tell me, how is the country supposed to defend itself at all?
All those powerful leaders who report will come out. There are plenty of them, thousands, I think. Send the 60-plus crowd in on contract and that's it. The country is saved. That's the brief rescue plan. In the comments, people often call me out saying, why are you criticizing? What do you suggest? Why do you only criticize? Well, just call all of them, and that's it. They'll save the country.
We'll all swim across the Tisza. This is turned into hype, and that's what public opinion is based on. Where's the protection of the state's information space? Where are the special services? Where is the SBU?
In short, once again, the people are to blame because they don't want to die. That's how it is. Democracy, democracy, so powerful, so powerful. Are the planes flying? Are we going to bomb everyone? As Zelensky said in that video he showed you at the beginning, but that's basically how we'll end it too. Goodbye, everyone.
Is it produced? Many people know, but simply put, how is enriched uranium or plutonium made? It's simple. You take regular ore, regular uranium, and there are different methods. For example, centrifugation. It just spins, and it separates the isotopes, and we get enriched uranium. There's no technology there that's super complicated or requires some kind of advanced electronics. Just think for yourself. So there's nothing there that requires some very complex equipment. Well, it's just basic gear.